Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's sunrise drive here at Djuma Private Game Reserve in the Sabi Sands. As you can all see, it's a well, this is good prospects for us because I'm fairly certain the two hyena that just walked in front of us are on their way back to the hyena den site. Now, I could be wrong, but I think it's going to be best for us to get into position at the hyena den and wait for them to arrive, because when they do arrive, if there are any hyena there, we can expect an elaborate greeting, and that'll be great to see. And Mark have headed out in the other vehicle to help us look for animals, and Brent's having the morning off. He's been on drive consistently for quite a few days now, and it's time for him to recharge the batteries. The hyena are on their way in. I have seen them to our left coming towards the den site, which is just in front of us. And like I say, we can expect to see an elaborate greeting when they do get here. No, the tricky thing is to determine where the best place is going to be to wait for this greeting that is about to happen. But I'm going to take our chances on this side of the termite mound that they use as their den. And the reason for that is that we often see a lot of activity from this little point. So I'm hoping the same thing happens in just a few moments. One hyena has just arrived. It is going to pop out. There it is. And it's looking off into the distance where I did see another hyena just move off to. So let's wait and see what happens here. Now, it's hard to tell whether this is a male or a female and exactly which hyena this is, as they all do look very similar. But I'm guessing that this could be a male, judging from the very horizontal belly. Oh, here comes another hyena. Let's see what happens here. There we go. That's the greeting we were hoping for. The individual was acting submissively, the one that was standing still, and listen carefully now, they're getting excited. We may even get some audio if we're lucky from them. You'll notice how its tail's curled up. They do this when they are greeting one another and when they get excited, because they've got scent glands on their anus which they will wipe on blades of grass, and by presenting its tail up like that, it's making it easier for the other hyena to pick up on the different scents, which can tell a huge story to them. Sadly, we don't understand, and our sense of smell isn't good enough to process this information, but to them, they can read in to one another's scents in a very in-depth detail. Just going to try and reposition ever so slightly, as my pre-planned spot has not been as good as I hoped it would be. If we're lucky, there are 3 little cubs that live within this termite mound, and you'll notice as Andrew pans across that there are a few burrows that lead into this den. Now let's watch closely. I'm hoping some of the inquisitive little cubs are going to pop their heads out and come and play for us. They'll naturally be a little bit cautious of any other animals coming up to the den sites, and it's safest for them to be hidden within the network of tunnels underground. When there is any excitement with the adults. As you can see, it's sniffing around very intently. Wouldn't it be nice to know exactly what it is that it is smelling and what it can process from these smells? They're all moving around in all the spots where we can't see them. So again, I'm just going to try and reposition ever so slightly. What I have noticed with this den site in the past is that occasionally hyena that are obviously related to this clan in some way will sometimes come past and then continue off to wherever they will be planning on spending their day. And it looks like that may be happening this morning. There was 1 adult here when we arrived and another 2 adults that we saw just after we went live that joined the den site. Now all 3 of them have headed off into this thick bush to our left. But I think it's worth hanging around because they are moving quite a lot and they could well come back to the den. And I've just seen one turn around now and it's heading back towards us, so let's get ready to see what happens here. Now these are the same 2 that arrived together, I think. Like I was saying though, it's hard to tell exactly which members are a close-knit members of this clan, and there's a fair amount of unknown between us as to exactly who's who. We can establish who the mothers are, but even then it can be difficult to distinguish the 2. And I'm sure a lot of the viewers are actually better at identifying these hyena than we are because of all the screenshots that you managed to capture. So if you do have any thoughts as to who's who, please let us know. All your help is hugely appreciated. While we're waiting for the hyena to come back, I've just noticed a golden orb-web spider in front of us, and it's collected a fair amount of dew over the course of the evening, and the misty weather that we had earlier this morning and last night would have definitely contributed to this dew that we can see on its web. Interestingly enough, some of the golden orb-web spiders are beginning to not maintain their webs very well, but this individual certainly has got a well-formed web. And you'll notice that the spider is sitting in the middle with its stomach facing towards us and its back facing away from us. And you also notice a line of debris kind of through the center of the web. That's all the old exoskeletons of carcasses that it's fed on. How they do feed on their prey once they've caught them is that they would simply suck out the hemolymph or bodily fluids from their prey. They won't be able to necessarily chew through parts of the prey. They're rather just suck all the insides out. So those are all the exoskeletons of little insects and bugs that have been caught. Well, I think our timing was just about spot on. Oh, it looks like one hyena's returning, because I thought they'd all moved off, and there's no set roster with their plans. They do come and go to the den site at various stages. There are obviously peaks in the early morning and late afternoon when we can expect to see them here, but it's not guaranteed. So I think we've got off to a great start with the sighting we've had of them this morning. Andrew, if you can try and get the one on the right, just sorry, buddy. Oh, they are doing their anal pasting, where they leave scent from a scent gland. And what they'll do is they'll walk over a blade of grass or a twig and rub this gland on it. And I think we may see this one do it again. Let's watch closely. This one has a very distinctive notch in its ear, which I have not noticed in the past on any of the hyena here, but again, that could just be me. But it does have a very distinctive notch on the upper edge of its left ear, so that's a good diagnostic feature that we can look for in the future. And you'll also notice that I said they could be males because their stomachs are quite horizontal. Now, basically, the females will often have a more prominent vertical ridge on their belly as it gets close to their hindquarters, whereas the males will typically have a flatter stomach as it gets towards those hindquarters. But basically, it's difficult to establish the difference between male and female hyena. They both have appendages which appear to be very similar to one another, the males and the females. So looking between their legs is not a sure way of telling whether they are male or female. And it's great that they're active this morning, but it's making Andrew's job a little bit difficult on the camera because they are moving through some quite thick bush. I'm just going to turn around again. I foresee that they are going to come back and do another lap sniffing around the den. Now, for those of you who are new to the show, welcome and good to have you with us. It's important to realize that this is a live safari. It's happening this very second, and it's also an interactive safari. So if you'd like to ask questions at any given stage, please do so. And to do it, you would hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or send an email through to questions@WildEarthTV. So get your questions through, and Nikki and Tara and the Final Control will do their best to get those through to us. And we've already got our first question through, all the way from Texas. And good morning, Catherine, and welcome on board with us. Catherine is interested to know whether hyenas are closely related to dogs. And it's a good question, Catherine. They certainly appear to be very dog-like. But interestingly enough, they're more closely related to cats. So that's obviously got to do with a lot of their internal anatomy that may be similar to cats. And interestingly enough, in terms of their taxonomic breakdown, you get the dog family, Canidae, and the cat family.
Do you see any hyenas?
I don't see any hyena, Andrew.
Okay,
Andrew was just double checking that we weren't missing anything, and I did see one hyena drifting off into the thick vegetation, so it may be that the show here is over, which is not a bad thing. We've had a good start to the morning, and when viewing animals, it's always best to see them when they're interactive and moving about, not necessarily sleeping, which a lot of them do. So I think we've got off to a solid start with the hyena den site this morning. Sadly, no visual of the cubs, but they are here, so if you'd like to see some cute little hyena cubs, you're going to have to tune into some more drives, because they are here and they are very inquisitive and make for some great viewing. This morning, though, it was not our lucky day with the cubs. Good morning, Shanae. We've just got another question through on Twitter, and Shanae is interested to know how would we be able to tell the difference between a golden orb web spider, which is the spider we had a brief look at a little bit earlier, and its cousin, the garden orb web spider. And that is a golden orb web spider, which is the spider we had a brief look at a little bit earlier, and its cousin, the garden orb web spider. And that is a good question and quite an easy one to answer, Shanae. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and find another golden orb web spider, which shouldn't take us too long. All the spider webs are glowing like lanterns because of the dew that's settled on the webbing with the sun coming through it. So it's making seeing the spider webs easy. We just need to find the right one now. No, I didn't. So that's interesting. I was so busy looking for spiders that I didn't see two of the tallest animals that we get in this area. Thank you, Andrew. So, Shanae, I am going to answer your question, but I am going to look for a golden orb web spider and its web before I tell you how to differentiate between the two. In the meantime, though, we can enjoy this sighting because there's not too many giraffe around at the moment, and even at the best of times, this area does not have a huge giraffe population, so very happy to see these two ladies this morning. And as one individual flicked its head there, you would have noticed a small little flock of birds flying off. And those are very useful birds for a lot of the animals here, because they will feed on the ectoparasites, the ticks that will suck blood from the giraffe, and they are called oxpeckers. I'm just going to creep forward ever so slightly. Looks like the giraffe are feeding towards us, so we're in for a treat here. And if we look closely, we will see that they're feeding on a very thorny plant called an acacia tree, and you'll find a lot of the tastier plants in this area have got security in the form of thorns. So this doesn't stop the giraffe, but it may slow them down a little bit. This is absolutely beautiful with the mist in the background. And I'm just going to establish, okay, it looks like I know where we can head now for our next angle. So we're just going to shoot ahead, and we can actually possibly have the sunlight behind us, and we should get some beautiful, beautiful shots of them shortly. So get ready to do your screenshots for those of you who do. And if you don't do screenshots, you should look into doing it, because some of the viewers, Shanae being one of them, who asked the question about the spiders, get some great, great screenshots. So it's a good way for you to get involved. Oh, I saw another spider web and lost focus on the giraffe again. But I'm just going to stop over here and wait for this individual to continue towards us. You may be wondering how I established that they are both ladies, and with the silhouettes of the head and the horns now, or horn-like structures rather, you will notice that they are quite thin, and they also have hair on top of them. There's an oxpecker right in the middle at the moment, so it doesn't have 3 horns, it's just 2 and a bird in the middle. But a thin ossicone, that small horn-like structure. The next one's about to cross here, Andrew. Beautiful. So those small little horns are thinner on the females than on the males, and the males are also bald on top. Well, the animals are certainly giving us the runaround this morning, and Andrew's been maneuvering that camera in every which way in order to try and bring you the shots, but apologies for when they do disappear behind the bushes. It's not much we can do about it. I think our lens also could be fogging up from the change in temperature, so now that the sun's beating down on our cold camera, it has created a bit of a foggy blur that Andrew's about to rectify. So stand by one, and this is a problem that I have yet to encounter, so an interesting morning we're having here. Andrew, maybe if we just head across to the spider web on the right here, it might be a bit better. There we go. Well, thankfully, there is a golden orbweb spider close to us here, and Andrew's just taking you in a little bit closer to it. And now I'll be able to answer Shanae's question. Shanae's interested to know if you can differentiate between a garden orbweb spider and a golden orbweb spider, and you certainly can. When you're looking at the animals themselves, the golden orbweb spider has got a thinner abdomen, considerably so. The garden orbweb spider's round, not oblong, and it's probably about 3 times the size of the body of this spider. And then there's also something that you'll look for in the web of a garden orbweb spider. It's got an interesting little structure that it weaves into the web called a stabilimentum, and that doesn't probably mean too much to anyone. Basically what you're looking for is a small zip-like structure that's white in coloration and about 2 inches in length. So it weaves this zigzag zip structure shape into the web. That's very characteristic of the garden orb web spider, and you can see this web lacks a little vertical zip below the center of the web. Sadly, we don't see too many garden orb web spiders, Archer, but if we do, I'll certainly stop and show you that little structure to look for. So I'm just going to try and get into a better position here for Andrew to be able to show you these giraffe. And 1 second, we should be in a decent spot. There we go. So we've just got a question through from Catherine, all the way in Chicago. Good morning, Catherine, and welcome on board with us. Catherine's interested to know whether the golden orb web spider will rebuild that web every night or every day. And no, they don't. They simply maintain their web once it's built. You do get other spiders, like the bark spider, for example, that will build its web every evening as the sun goes down, and every morning as the sun comes up, it'll actually consume the web. It'll feed on it to not waste those precious resources. And once it's fed on it and taken its web down, essentially, it will relax during the day, hidden in the crack of a tree, and then come nightfall, it'll start building its web all again. So we've managed to see that once or twice on previous shows in the evening, the bark spiders building their webs, but it is a great building techniques. So to you all around the world, so don't go anywhere. We do have our tech geniuses working at the problem. As I was saying, the giraffe moved off into quite a thick area that would make difficult viewing, so I think it's time to continue in search of other animals, and I've headed down into an area where I've had a lot of luck in the past, especially with leopards, but a lot of animals, and the reason for that is we're heading towards a waterhole, and at that waterhole there's often a lot of life, so we're on our way there. We should be there in about 10 minutes if we carry on slowly, and we could bump into anything along the way. The Game Drive channel, which I'm listening to through my earpiece, doesn't appear to be working very well this morning, and I'm not sure why, but I'm battling to get updates from the other vehicles, which is not a problem, but it does mean that we will be less likely to be able to call anyone if we find anything, and vice versa. With our luck so far, though, I don't think we need anybody else's help, so let's just hope it continues that way. We've just got a question through from Jen in Toronto, and good morning, Jen, thanks for sending your question through. Jen observed that these two giraffes that we saw a little bit earlier appeared to be a little bit darker than normal, and she was wondering if the reason for that is potentially because they may have erected their coats to create more insulation on this colder morning. And it's something that other animals like impala will do. You correct Jen about that. So, yes, I think certainly the giraffes would have erected their coats to create a thicker layer of insulation this morning, as it is crisp and cool. But in terms of the actual coloration, it could have been a combination of things. The lighting and the angle that we were viewing them from, a lot of the time we were looking into the sun, so it may have appeared that they were a little bit darker than normal. And also simply from a genetics perspective, you do get some lightly colored giraffe and some more darkly colored giraffe. So genetics as well as age to a degree can also play a part in the coloration of a giraffe. But they certainly did look fluffy this morning. Thanks for sending that question through, Jen. And just a reminder to any of you who have just tuned in, if you would like to ask questions, you can do so on Twitter with hashtag SafariLive, or on email, questions@wildearth.tv. You can probably hear a strange noise, and not really a strange noise, but there's some birds that we're calling. I'm hoping they're going to call again. They have flown off, but you may be able to hear them. In the meantime, there's 3 fork-tailed drongos having a debate. Oh no, it's not. It's 2 fork-tailed drongos that were trying to steal the kill that a white-crested helmet shrike's made. So it's an aerial attack by the drongos onto the white-crested helmet shrikes, and they're moving around so quickly that it's hard to see what exactly is going on. But the drongos are there. I can't see where the white-crested helmet shrike has gone, but that was the little bird that had made the kill. And the drongos opportunistically came in, and I'm not sure whether they managed to steal it or not, but it's interesting behavior. And something that happens quite commonly, Archer, is that bigger and stronger animals will be able to steal from smaller, weaker animals, and it happens commonly. Lions will steal from leopard, and drongos will steal from white-crested helmet shrikes. So, what I'm going to do is, maybe even better, Andrew can try and show you the real thing. There's one white-crested helmet shrike that's just landed off to a little bush on our right, and you can actually hear them calling. They make a funny clicking noise that you probably heard there. That's the white-crested helmet shrikes. Beautiful, look at this view. We seldom get great views of them. Well done, Andrew. And that one's almost bathing in the dewy, wet leaves of this weeping wattle. And isn't that interesting? That's the first. The birds are utilizing the dew to have a little morning shower. You would have noticed they've got a bright yellow ring around their eye. Their crest is not very prominent, but they do have a funny little white afro on their head. And it was one of these white-crested helmet shrikes that was being attacked by the fork-tailed drongos, trying to steal its hard-earned meal. There's quite a few of the white-crested helmet shrikes. Now that's the fork-tailed drongo that's just flown and obviously looking for another easy meal. Now the go-away birds are calling behind us. Quack. So this is what one would call a bird party, and As the term suggests, it's a party of birds all coming together, and it may be just one bird that finds a hatching of insects or a bounty of food, and then slowly the word spreads and everyone arrives, and it might be worth us hanging around because we could find a few other species coming to join in. Again, Andrew's being given the runaround this morning by all the animals, but that's how we like it. The more action we get, the better. And another great shot. This one's made a kill. So this is obviously what they're feeding on, the caterpillars, it looks like, potentially, that may be feeding on the wattle tree with the very small leaves. Such pretty birds, these, and we don't often get to show you them this closely. Beautiful. Now, while we stopped here watching these birds and listening to the birds around us, we can also potentially hear any other noises which may help us to track down some of the bigger, better-known stars of the show, the lion and the leopard, for example, even elephants. As we sit here quietly, we can hear the bush around us and often get some very useful signals as to where we should probably head to look for animals. And it's often when you are sitting looking at the small animals that you get wind of where the bigger animals might be. It hasn't happened this morning, but it is one of the benefits of being stopped, not permanently searching for the monsters out here, but stopping and appreciating the smaller things as we go. And like I say, very often, I remember one specific sighting, we stopped to look at a tiny bird called a pygmy kingfisher. I don't think we actually managed to get it on camera, but while we were trying to, one of the old cameramen, Jason, spotted a leopard walking in the background, so that's an example of how you do get spoiled, and often it requires you to stop and take in the smaller critters out here. Can any station copy me? So still not having any luck on the Game Drive channel, but at least I am hearing some of the other vehicles, so even though they can't hear us, the fact that I can hear them is useful, because if they do find something, I will be able to at least know what's going on. It's important to check for tracks, especially at road junctions where two roads meet. And that's because possibly one animal may have joined onto the road that you haven't been driving on, and that way it's a good point to stop and search and make sure that anything of interest hasn't been walking down the roads that we're driving down. I can see tracks of a small nocturnal animal called the civet, which I guess you could describe almost as a raccoon-like animal. We don't get to see them very often because they are nocturnal and quite secretive, but we often see their tracks in the morning. And for me, just knowing that animals have been here, not necessarily seeing them, but imagining them being here, is almost as good as seeing them in real life. To imagine doing, where they were sniffing about, and just to simply and dam, the waterhole rather, and they're failing that. Hopefully it'll heading down this road. I wonder if it's by the size of the track and the fact that there are two of them. Sadly, it's not easy for us to show you the tracks as the camera is fixed on a tripod, and often the angle that we would require to show you doesn't work out so well from the fixed camera. But if I do see any of the clear tracks, I will certainly try and show you. So again, that's a useful piece of information that we can assume, I can't be certain, but I'm fairly certain that the two giraffe we just saw would have passed through here either late yesterday evening or even possibly in the course of the night. It's quite a bright moon at the moment, even though it's only half full. It gives off a lot of light, and you'll find a lot of the daytime animals moving more frequently when the moon is fuller because they have better vision and therefore less concern for predators. And from here to where we saw those two giraffe was probably about a mile as the crow flies. Just got a question through from Grace in Texas. Good morning, Grace, and welcome on board with us. Apologies for the lens. Do you mind passing that cloth up? It's hard for Andrew to wipe it because he can't see what he's doing, but I can. So 1 second. Seems a little bit better, but it is probably just because we're heading directly into the sunlight. Anyway, Grace from Texas, good morning, and thanks for sending your question through. Grace is interested to know, why do the giraffe have those little horns, and what purpose do they serve? Well, to be honest, Grace, they serve a very small purpose, and the reason why I say that is because hundreds and thousands of years ago, the giraffe would have had regular horns, just like the other animals here, which have got a bone inner and a keratin sheath. And over many, many years of evolution, they have not required the need for these horns, and that's why they've slowly shrunk down to these little vestigial horns, which don't actually provide a huge function, especially to the females who don't fight. The males who do fight with one another will swing their necks into one another's bodies, and those horns, I guess, will increase the intensity of the blow, as it's a concentrated point from which all that power will be exerted. But even the male giraffes, because they are small and blunt horns, it goes to show that they don't require sharp needle-like horns like a lot of the other animals in order to either defend themselves and or fight between one another for potential mating prospects. So I guess the long and the short of it is that they're not very aggressive animals and therefore don't need very sharp horns. Even a lot of the animals with horns won't necessarily intend on harming anything or necessarily defending themselves against predators. It's often interspecies combat. You would have noticed Andrew panned across to the waterhole where we were hoping on finding something, and there's nobody home. That's probably because I'm a little bit early to be expecting visitors at this specific bar. As the day heats up and the animals become more thirsty, we can expect an increase in activity at the waterholes. Now, there's a small branch across the road which I just have to remove quickly. And that would have been the elephants coming through and pushing over these branches, and that's something we get used to out here. You would have noticed I was treating that branch very delicately, and the reason for that is because it's got many, many hooked thorns, and I'm actually going to get one off for you and show you these thorns. So as I swivel the branch around slowly,
I think you're a bit close.
I'm a bit too close for Andrew to focus. Sorry, let's move across to here. As I swivel the branch around, you'll notice that it has a long straight thorn, but as I swivel this way, it's also got a little hooked thorn over there that you can see. So, not a branch or tree that you want to get tangled in. It's called a buffalo thorn tree, and it's got these very distinctive thorns and also leaves, which are edible to us if we're desperate for a salad. And it's also, like I said earlier, one of the tastier plants, and the tastier plants, like I say, have got the security in the form of thorns, which make it more difficult for animals to feed on. It doesn't stop them, but it certainly slows them down. And the other interesting thing about this branch is that it's got a very interesting traditional use with the local Zulu tribe that you get in South Africa. And basically, when somebody dies in Zulu customs, if they die away from their home or place of birth, this branch will be used to collect and gather their spirits from wherever they have died in order to take them back to their home place where they'll be buried and where they can rest. So, if, for example, somebody has died away from their home, a branch from their home area will be taken to their place of death, and a ceremony will be performed. Now, when the branch gets taken there, it's taken in a taxi or any form of vehicle. There's no cost involved. But when the branch comes back, because it's carrying somebody's soul, whoever's performing the ceremony and bringing the person's soul back to their home place will actually pay a fare for whatever transport is required for the soul to be transported back to their home, which is a really interesting traditional custom that gets employed. It also has tasty berries that a lot of the animals will feed on. We've seen some great footage of squirrels feeding on these berries, and even we can feed on them. They've got a sugary coating which is quite tasty. Good. The buffalo thorn. Another thing is, you may be wondering why it's called the buffalo thorn. And the reason for that is that they can be used by buffalo who are seeking additional help when being attacked by lions. Now, when they are attacked by lions, if they can manage to reverse into one of these bushes, it'll mean that their rear is protected as the lions cannot get through this tangle of thorns. And that way, just their head protruding and their dangerous end, their sharp end with the horns, they can defend themselves. So that's the reason why it's called a buffalo thorn. I've never seen that happen, but it obviously does happen from time to time. And it really would be interesting to see a buffalo using some vegetation to aid against a lion attack. Texan. Morning, Texan. It's Scott. I'm just wondering if there's any updates, please. Copy. Thank you. Okay, well, that's some good news. We've had a breakthrough and managed to get through to one of the other vehicles. He's also having problems. It appears that everyone's having problems. Who knows, maybe some baboons were playing on one of the repeater antennas last night and they've loosened some cables. I'm not sure. But what I did manage to hear from him is that he has heard no updates, so we're not missing out on any action that other vehicles are enjoying. The only action we're missing out on is with the animals that have yet to be found. So that is what we are currently trying to do. We are trying to find something interesting. And the beauty of being out on safari, regardless of where you are, is that as much as you may think you know about an area, you've got very little impact on what you see. And there's nothing stopping a leopard or a lion being around this very next corner that we drive around. And that's what makes it so exciting and why I love this job, because of the unknown and the excitement of coming across these animals, whatever they may be. I've just seen a leopard track. I'm going to need to get out and look at more than just one track to be able to try and establish whether they are fresh or not. So give me a moment or two just to investigate. It's a male leopard track, and it's in the center part of the road where there's often a strip of grass where the tire tracks seldom run. And because I can't see the tracks anywhere else on the road, it means that in all likelihood this track isn't very fresh, and it's just one track that hasn't been driven over by the vehicles that have been here. So I don't think it's very fresh, but I'm going to just double check on this side of the road. Okay, well, worth a closer look, but sadly, it is an older track. But still nice to know that this is an area that leopards move through. The reason why I know that it was a male leopard's track is because of its size. It was fairly large, and that's an easy way to distinguish between males and females. So we started off this morning with a beautiful misty sunrise, and now the mist has risen and the sun has also risen higher. The hyena den site provided us with some great action early on, and as we were leaving the den we actually got to see two female giraffe, which are animals we don't see very often out here. They obviously don't like the habitat, and you'll find that that determines where animals will be throughout various different wilderness areas in Africa. It's the food and the habitat that will cause increases or decreases in certain populations of various animals. Since then, that's been a little bit quiet on the mammal front, but we did enjoy a bird party where we saw a fork-tailed drongo chasing a white-crested helmet shrike trying to steal its kill. I think the white-crested helmet shrike had a small caterpillar that the drongos wanted to steal for breakfast. And now, since then, we have been in search of anything of interest and are making our way through an area where I have been lucky in the past with a lot of great sightings of various animals. And basically we just need to continue searching until we find something, hopefully. The Game Drive channel is not working too well, so we're all battling to communicate with one another, and that does make our lives a little bit more difficult because it's difficult to establish where people are searching, what they are searching for, and if they have actually found anything. So we are facing that little difficulty, but that's not a concern because even alone we have a strong chance of finding something, provided we A, get lucky, that's the ultimate, or B, find some tracks, and that way we can try and track down the animal by following its footprints. So that's A and B, I guess. C would be to listen and to hear. So we could also listen and hear animals, alarm calls, that certain animals may cry out when they see a predator, or simply just some crashing vegetation as a herd of elephants moves through the bush. So we can use different senses in order to be able to try and find the animals. A few hyena tracks on the road. They move huge distances every evening, the hyena. And it's a common track to see on most of the roads we drive every morning. Just a reminder to those of you who may be joining for the first time, firstly a very warm welcome, and also just to let you know this is a live safari, so it's happening this very second, which is hard to believe, but somehow it's happening. The technology these days allows for it, and it also allows for us to interact, so if you'd like to ask questions at any stage, please do so, and to do so you would hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, and or send a email through to questions@wildearth.tv. Just needed to double check some more tracks there. They were on the left hand side of the road, but it was hyena again. They can be a little bit confusing with leopard or lion tracks from a glance. I just needed to double check. It's a beautiful, crisp and cool morning here. It's 16 degrees Celsius, which is around 61 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm told. But as the sun creeps up, it's getting notably warmer minute by minute. The last station copying you. Thank you. As you can see, we've got a beautiful Birchall starling iridescing in the morning sunlight. And this is a very good feature when identifying the starlings of this area. They're often this metallic blue that iridesces beautifully when they are in the morning sunlight. If they were in the shade or in a dark area, they would appear to just be a dark blue color without that iridescent sheen. You can hear some birds' alarm calling, and I'm just trying to find out where it is. It can be a little bit difficult with the earpiece in one ear, and I'm only relying on my left ear for audio, so my surround sound is a bit lopsided. The power of the mind is an incredible thing. I thought I had seen something leopard-like, but it's in fact just a few tufts of grass with a very cottony white flower that I thought was a leopard's tail. That's exactly what I was looking at. You can see those little white puffs of what are the grass's seeds, and that's what got me confused. And it's certainly not the first time. I've embarrassed myself in many a safari when you are searching and hoping to find whatever animal it may be, leopard or lion. You come around a corner and you see either a stump or possibly even an antelope, and you think that that may be the lion or leopard that you're looking for, and you stop and you scream, "Lion, leopard!" and get all your guests excited, only to shortly thereafter apologize profusely for pointing them in the direction of a stump. Or once I called some waterbuck a pride of lion. That was an embarrassing one. But the power of the mind is strong when it comes to twisting and contorting whatever we may see to what we may want to see. got another game viewer, so maybe they'll have some info for us. Morning, Bernie. Tell us the good news.
I'll tell you what, we've been cooking this morning. Did you copy us on the radio? Morning, guys. Morning. There's an extensive team we now drag around the bush.
Yeah.
Have you found anything?
No, nothing yet.
Bloody hell, man. I came this way in the hope that you'll shed some light.
I was hoping to get the same information from you.
Buffaloes have headed towards Chitwa, so there's no buffaloes.
Okay. I haven't seen any tracks or anything of interest, Bernie, so...
My daughter England, Konzo, heading. The male lions walked out past that way, past First Rock, so they're gone.
Okay.
And this, out of interest, gentlemen, is what happens when you broadside an elephant. So those are two cutting holes.
I wasn't driving, thankfully.
True story. No, we've got no news.
Okay, cool. Well, hopefully things...
Look up for you.
Yeah, and you.
All of you.
It was when we got there, but then the adults moved off. It could have changed, because that was quite a while back, so it might be worth popping in.
Good luck, man.
All right, so have a good morning.
Bye.
Thank you. Well, you would have probably noticed that Bernie was joking around with us there, saying that, haven't we heard what's going on the radio? And like I said, it's all of us that are collectively having this problem with the radios. And that was great for us just to be able to stop and share whatever information we had, which from both of our sides wasn't too much. What I can tell you though is that a little bit further down this riverbed is apparently a lioness with some cubs. Now, it's just a report that we've had, and it's good prospects for the future, even though we may not be able to see them this morning or tomorrow or the next day. In the future, we can hopefully look forward to seeing a lioness with some newborn cubs. I'm not even sure how many cubs are there, and they're probably tiny little furballs at the moment that she'll be looking after, and they won't be moving huge distances, but as they do grow older, she will begin to move with them more often and probably rejoin with her pride, and that way hopefully we'll be able to get to see her and her babies. And there are certain areas where we can go and certain areas where we can't go out here, so there's no fences that prevent us. It's simply roads that form boundaries of certain properties where some vehicles can traverse and others cannot. And it's certainly the best way to ensure everyone does have a good time out here, because if there was no order or control in terms of where people could drive, you would get a lot of chaotic scenarios where there's too many people in one place, so it's better to have everybody spread out throughout the reserve. Okay, we've got some good news, folks. Stefan and Mark, who are out helping us this morning looking for animals, have just found something. They're not far from us, so we're gonna try and get into that area as quick as possible. It's quite thick in that area, so I want to make sure we get into there as soon as we can with this small maneuverable vehicle that we're so lucky to drive around in, and make sure that we all get to see exactly what it is. The radio was a bit crackly, so I couldn't hear exactly what the animal was, but I know where to go and know that we need to get there fairly quickly, so hold on as we just pick up the tempo a little bit. It won't be for long though. Within 5 minutes we will be where we need to be, even less than that. Bernie, come on. Just trying to let Bernie know the vehicle we've just seen, but it doesn't seem like his radio is working. But it was worth a try, just to try and share as much of the information we can as possible with everyone. The reason why we need to hurry is because we are actually on our eastern boundary here. So everything on the right we cannot go to, everything on the left we can. Whatever Steph and Mark have found is just on the left-hand side of the road. So I feel that if it does head to the right, we'll have to wave it goodbye. So it's another reason why I'm just picking up the tempo a little bit. This is exciting. After not knowing what we would be doing next, we got a radio call through from Stefan and Mark. And for those of you who don't know Stefan and Mark, they're two of the other presenters who are out tracking, searching for animals for us all to enjoy this morning. So they've certainly achieved what they set out to. But I guess the real test will be once we've established what it is that they found. Notice what the little bumps, or be wondering what the little bumps in the road are that we go over every now and then. There's one approaching here, and they're not speed bumps, but I guess they do indirectly serve that purpose. The reason why they are built into the roads, though, is in order to allow water runoff to be filtered off and drained off into the vegetation surrounding the roads, because if the road was allowed to build up momentum as water flowed down, it would simply turn into a river and wash away. Okay. Okay, copy. Thank you. Can you just ask if Steph is the third vehicle? Okay, copy, perfect, thank you. So basically, Stefan is passing information back to Tara in the final control room, and then Tara is relaying that information to me. And I've just got information that there's 3 vehicles in the sighting, which is the maximum that we'll allow in a sighting with any one animal. And that's not a problem though, because as soon as we get here, Stefan will make space for us. And we will take his place as the third vehicle. So we're just ironing out a few protocols that need to be adhered to ensure that we do respect animals and only keep 3 vehicles as a maximum per sighting. We're getting very close now, and I can't wait to see what it is that they found. Okay. Well, I can see other vehicles. So we're in the right place. Now we just need to find out what exactly they're looking at. They appear to be coming towards us, so I think it would make most sense for us to wait here. So bear with us, folks, we're about to see something interesting. And where it is and what it is and where it's going to pop out, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure this vehicle will be able to help us and tell us where the animal is. Morning.
Apologies about the channel.
We're all in the same boat, Andrew. Okay. Thanks very much, Andrew. Have a good morning, everyone. Okay, well, we're getting warmer. We are getting warmer, and Andrew kindly just made space for us. And we now need to try and get you guys a view. It's very thick in here, so we're going to have to be sensitive and respect that. Excuse me, there is an animal here, and we don't want to interfere on its daily ongoings too much. So, okay. Oof, that's very thick. And I'm sure we'll get a little gap there. Maybe a little bit forward, Andrew, hey? Can you see it? There we go. That'll work. You got it, Andrew?
No.
Ah, yeah. No. Oh. Well, there you can see it's a leopard, and she's just started moving off. Judging by her body language, she looked like she could be possibly stalking something in this thick bush. So we are going to bear that in mind and not get too close and potentially chase off whatever it is she may be looking at. But thankfully this vehicle is very maneuverable, and we can slither through this thick vegetation with relative ease compared to the other vehicles. In the northeastern corner now of the Djuma property, and that's the furthest northeastern part of any area we can traverse. I've just seen Steph and Mark. We can now thank them for their hard work this morning. And they're just giving us a quick thumbs up, but we don't have time to chat with them. We'll thank them profusely afterwards, and I will pass on your thanks as well, because without them we wouldn't be watching this animal. And it is thick, so we do have to be cautious of not chasing away whatever it is that she's interested in, but you can tell by her body language that she's very focused and she can hear something moving through this vegetation. I'm not sure exactly who it is, but it could potentially be Karula, who's a female leopard whose territory encompasses Djuma, and we do get to see very often. There you may have noticed that she was scent marking, indicating that this is indeed her territory. And what a great change of tune. I didn't know what I was going to do next this morning until I got the radio call through from Final Control. And again, well done to Mark and Steph. Now, when following animals off-road, we try and, well, we know which trees we can and can't drive over. Some will spring back up, like the one I'm about to drive over now, and others will break and snap, so we try and avoid the ones that we're going to kill. And we also have to avoid certain plants that will puncture our tires. So there's various different plants that we're looking out for, but we are causing a very small impact on the environment here. Another thing we need to do is make sure that we... It's going to be a bit of a squeeze. Is that we don't interfere with whatever the animals are doing. So I'm going to try and keep my distance and take the path of least resistance in order to not interfere with this leopard's hunting. Now, I'm sure a lot of our more experienced viewers are already trying to identify this leopard, and to do that they'll be looking at various patterns of the spots. You can look at different patterns on any part of the body really, but it's usually the face that helps to distinguish leopards from others. And I'll be interested to know who this is. I certainly don't consider myself as a specialist when it comes to identifying the different individuals we get out here. And thank you to you, the viewers, who so often come to the rescue and tell us who it is that we are looking at. Completely lost sight of her, but I'm sure we will get a visual of her again shortly. Again, I'd rather take a more open pathway and loop ahead of her general movement of direction than stay right on her tail. You can obviously imagine it's far easier for her to move around through this thick bush than it is for us. Got it there, Andrew. Okay. Well, we have temporarily lost visual, but like I say, nothing to worry about. I'm sure we'll find her again shortly. I wonder what it is that she can smell or what she's heard. But she has been moving in one prominent direction, and that's going to help us now in relocating her. Oh, I've just heard something, alarm call. It's either an Inyala or a kudu. I think. So let's just keep quiet. quiet and listen for a moment. I heard a small bark-like sound. But not all is silent. So maybe I was imagining things. Bulleray on Twitter, good morning, and welcome on board. Bulleray is wondering if it's potentially Shadow, a female leopard that we see from time to time. It's highly, highly unlikely that this would be Shadow. We are very far away from her territory, and I would be confident to say that it's not going to be Shadow. We are in the far northeast of our property. Shadow operates to the far west of Arethusa. So, it was a kudu, that alarm called. And I've just heard it again now. You may have heard it. There we go. So, that's the alarm call of a kudu. I think... Oh, well done. Andrew's actually managed to find it. I couldn't see it, so I could just hear it in the thick bush. The kudu's a bit big for a leopard, especially a female, so it's not a missed opportunity, unless of course there was a young kudu that she would have tried to catch. What is interesting about this leopard's behavior, and I've just got a glimpse of her scent marking again, she's very actively scent marking, and that makes me wonder who it is and why the need for the increase in scent marking. Bear with us, we are going to get some more great views of her. But at the moment, she is moving around with a lot of purpose. Hopefully it won't be long until we get to show you this action. She should be somewhere just in front of us now. That was where I last saw her heading. But she is zigzagging, so she's no longer moving on a straight path as she was earlier. And we're actually driving back basically down the same way that we actually came before turning.